Welcome back from the warp, you beautiful bastards. Hope you guys are enjoying your days. And in this one, we're doing chapter 16 of the Leviathan novel by Darius Hinks. Check out the background. Welcome to Japan. And let's get into this. Good morning, guys. Welcome to Japan again. And here we are, Senso-ji Temple and Shrine. But also to the right of me is Skytree. Anyways, let's get back to the temple. This gimbal figure is shite out. Let's do reading the next chapter. Well, with the old gods. Ladies and gentlemen, Senso-ji Temple and Shrine. This is the shrine. And then in a second, I will show you guys the temple. Ladies and gents, Senso-ji Temple, which is right there, and then the shrine. And it's actually massive, this thing. Let's say the shrine in height, probably about 80 feet. Just beautiful. Argentinum Forest, Samnium Province Regium. Voltus stumbled as the harbinger stepped out onto the walkway. For a moment, he thought the whole thing would give way. Stanchions buckled, spitting rivets barely managing to hold. The creature's morphology was similar to the smaller tyranids, but everything was magnified to an obscured scale. Its head was topped by a cranial armor that rose from its skull into a trio of bone blades, and there was a colossal tail lashing behind its legs. Voltus glanced at Tenaro. "Do we hold the same plan?" Tenaro nodded without hesitation, directing his squad to the new positions. "But we will need more pistols to take this thing down." Voltus nodded, but he was surprised to feel anger coursing through his veins. Something about the Colossus was affecting his mental state. The creature was vile, but that was no excuse for his lack of composure. He replayed Castamon's warning in his head. Passion is weakness. Equilibrium is strength. He must be rational. His purpose was to reach Zarax with the symbiont. Everything else was extraneous. The colossal tyrannid was halfway across the gantry, advancing slowly as lesser organisms swarmed around its legs. Across the gantry, advancing slowly as the lesser organisms swarmed around its legs, hissing and brandishing their weaponized throats. "Courage and honor," cried Tenaro, raising his pistol. "Courage and honor," roared the other ultramarines, hoisting their pyre blasters onto their hips. To Voltus, the surprise, two pilgrims raised their pistols and cried, "For the Emperor!" The ultramarines opened fire, spraying blue-white promethium as they ran forward. "For Gilaman!" howled Sergeant Tenaro as he led the charge, vaulting over burning bodies. "For Ultramar and Macrag!" Voltus ran in his wake, firing his bolt pistol and lashing out with his knife. It was a chaotic scene with creatures pressing in from every direction. But the Ultramarines moved with parade ground precision. Shadow washed over Voltus as the Harbinger strode through the flames and reared up in front of them. The smaller bioforms were frenzied, but the Harbinger looked oddly serene, gazing down at the carnage. Then it leant back, raised a scythe-like arm, and hammered it down, splitting one of the Ultramarines down the middle, splashing his innards through the darkness. The blow landed with such force that the whole structure gave way. Collapsing with an explosion of sparks and rent metal, dozens of Tyranids were hurled to their deaths, and the Ultramarines finally broke ranks, leaping for handholds. The Harbinger killed the second Marine, beheading him with another swipe of its bladed arm. As the gantry gave way, Baraka tumbled into the abyss, still spewing fire from his pyre blaster. The Harbinger fell to, plummeting after him. Voltus reached out just in time to grab a shard of splintered metal as bodies tumbled past him. The smaller Tyranid screamed and ignored the rest of the squad, making straight for Voltus. Rather than grab on with the second hand to haul himself back up, he remained where he was, suspended one-handed over the drop and using his spare hand to shoot. The gun barked, punching Tyranids back into the darkness. Then it clicked on empty. He clamped the gun to his armor and hauled himself up onto the listing walkway. All around him, Ultramarines were doing the same, clambering up through the wreckage, firing into the mayhem. A Tyranid leapt at him, raking claws down his armor and driving him back to the edge. He jammed his combat knife through the creature's jaw. Then he lifted the still struggling Xenos up off its hooves and prepared to hurl it from the ledge. Just in time, he saw the shape on its back. He slammed the host creature onto the floor, placed a boot on its throat, and used a knife to cut the parasite from its carapace. The symbiont fidgeted and squirmed in his gauntlet, trying to free itself. As he clutched it tighter, his mind filled with a vivid image. He saw Xarax burning and tumbling, laid to waste by the Xenos host. Then he rose above the destruction as if flying into the clouds. He saw the whole continent shrink under a tide of purple and bone-colored horrors. Pain exploded across his face. He fell, rolling and clattering across the grilled metal. The vision faded and he leapt up, still gripping the symbiont. There was a man-sized Tyranid standing a few feet away, holding a tube of rotten muscle. Black, treacly liquid dripped from the weapon's orifice. The pain in the side of his face grew worse, and he had heard a grinding sound like someone working a lathe. He ignored the pain, opened up the containment unit, and shoved the symbiote inside. Fastening the lock, the cylinder immediately filled with a viscous, life-sustaining suspension. Then he slammed the fresh magazine into his pistol and shot his attacker in the head, sending it spinning into the abyss. Voltus reached up and touch his helmet. The ceramite had been cracked. Something moist and spiny was clawing at the break, shivering as it tried to puncture his skull. He popped it in his fist like an overripe fruit. Acid smoked and fizzled down his helmet, and he hurled the mess onto the floor. Then he looked around, gun raised, searching for his next attacker. Nothing was close enough to be a threat. He took clippers from his armor and gripped the thin spine that the parasite had left in his cheekbone. He had treated enough Tyranid victims to know that the spine would currently be pumping venom into his bloodstream. He pulled at the spine. It was barbed, tearing his bone and cartilage, but it came free. He took a few steps backwards towards the central platform and gunned down the nearest Tyranids, clearing the space so he could look around and get a clear picture of what was happening. The main walkway was moist, ruined, and it had taken several of the smaller gantries with it. Tanaro and the others were back on their feet, firing. There was no sign of the Harbinger, but still, to his relief, when he saw Baraka, several layers down, still spitting gouts of promethium as he hauled himself back up towards the exit. He was not surprised to see that the pilgrims were dead, fragments of their bodies dangling from splintered metalwork. He checked the containment unit was still secured and then headed off down one of the gantries, loosing off shots as he crossed a cavernous drop. He was halfway to the exit when a web of metal screamed and jolted again. He lost his footing but managed to control his fall. Leaping onto another gantry and crouching low as the chamber shook, the Harbinger crawled spider-like into view, scuttling up the walls, tearing gantries from the rock. Tanaro and the others had almost made it to the exit. It was now a ragged hole rather than a doorway. The daylit chamber beyond was clearly visible. Voltus sprinted down a gantry and leapt a 10-foot gap and landed lightly on another gantry. He downed attackers, tearing throats and faces with his knife, and ran on, making a direct line for the exit. Ahead of him, Baraka clambered up towards the doorway, pouring promethium onto the creature swarming up after him. Voltus had almost reached the opening when the gantry vanished from beneath his feet. He tried to grab a handhold, but there was nothing within reach, and he fell, plunging into the darkness. The Harbinger caught him in a claw as big as he was and opened its jaws. Voltus quickly analyzed this thing's face, identifying flaws and weaknesses. The left side of it had been wounded by a recent explosion. Chitin and muscle had been ripped away, exposing workings of its jaw. The whole left side of its head had been burned, revealing charred, exposed fibers. The divide ran so neatly in the center of the creature's face that it looked like a mask. One side pale and bone-like, the other side dark and glistening. He fired at the wounded side until the gun clicked on empty. The rounds punched through the monster's chin and jaw. A smaller breed of Tyranid would have been killed by those shots, its brain pulverized, but this one was merely surprised. Its head snapped to one side and it stumbled. It only loosened its grip on Voltus for a moment, but that was enough. He leapt clear, drawing his knife as he dived, slamming the blade into the wall and swinging high enough to latch his other hand around a support. The Harbinger sank its claws into the wall and prepared to leap up after him. Flames roared past Voltus and splashed into the Tyranid's upturned face as Baraka and the rest of the squad opened fire. The promethium clung to every crevice and fold, gathering in the area of exposed tissue. The Harbinger stumbled again, dropping a dozen feet as it scrabbled at the rock for another hold. Voltus leapt a few more times, then Baraka reached down, grabbed him by the forearm, and hauled him up to the doorway. Below, the Harbinger was trapped in the wreckage it had created, enmeshed in a web of broken supports and gantries. Seeing that it could not stop Voltus leaving, the creature tilted its head and screamed. The sound was so loud and so disturbing that even the Ultramarines recoiled, stumbling back from the opening. "Bolt rounds," said Sergeant Tenaro, waving the squad back to the edge. "Target the supports." They fired on the gantries, heaped around the Harbinger. The metal tore under a storm of shots coming away from the Tyranid's grip. In a shower of sparks, the creature fell, plummeting into the darkness, still screaming as it vanished from sight. The Ultramarines waited at the edge of the chamber, listening to the crashing noises that echoed up from the darkness. A few of the smaller Tyranids leapt across the drop, hissing, trying to latch on, but they were easily shot down after the first few attempts. The other Xenos realized the jump was too far and began shooting, instead spitting grubs and tendrils through the air. Ultramarines backed away, seeing no other need to waste any more ammunition. Then Sergeant Tenaro led them all back across the entrance hall towards the doors that opened onto the forest. The swell was already fading, a little more than a rippling in the leaves, and they emerged into daylight. They hurried across the open area surrounded the base of the geo-engine, not stopping until they were back beneath the cover of trees. "That thing was set on reaching you," said Baraka, studying Voltus. "An old friend?" Voltus felt the gaze of the whole squad upon him. He nodded. "I saw it on the Incorruptible. It was a creature that slew Tyrus." The others all watched him in silence. They had the familiar sense that they were wary of him, as though his study of Xenos had tainted him. Sergeant Tenaro was solemn for once. "We must make haste to the storm speeders. If Xenos are landing in these kinds of numbers, Lieutenant Casaman must be informed." Well, there you have it, guys. And ladies and germs, peoples and worms. That was chapter 16. And I hope you guys are enjoying the Japan Tokyo vlog greetings. Here we are again at Senso-ji Temple. If you guys have ever have a chance to come down to Japan, just do it. But as the Emperor and Warhammer says, for the old gods. And look at what we're sitting in, a temple dedicated to old gods. But if you guys are liking this video, check out this one over here. It'll be a link to another one of the chapters if you haven't followed along and watched the other ones. Other than that, hope you guys are having a great day, and see you in the warp. So after Senso-ji Temple, I went to Harajuku type area, and this is Chrome Hearts. The interior aesthetics are on point beyond belief, like full wood details. Actually, I'm pretty sure they might be hand carved, but it's really, really aesthetically pleasing, and just the clean design of it. Here's a 180SX that just popped in this baby blue, or robin's egg blue, whichever one you want to call it. I had to do it backwards because it just made the emphasis on the car that much better, and I like the people walking backwards while recording. It was beautiful outside JR Tokyo Station, and here's JR Tokyo Station, and as you can see, the red brick building and the overall construction is just enormous. This is not even, I think, a quarter of it, and this square is massive. You could host 1,000+ people in this square alone, and in the mornings between 7 and 8, the foot traffic going in and out of JR Station is insane. And as you can see, the weather was extremely beautiful in December. And then went inside, and this is the part of the interior, and I had to get one of the stamps that they hold at the JR Station line endings or beginnings, but you can find them all over most of the green lines. And here we have one of the infamous Pokemon centers. This is the one in Shibuya, and it was retardedly busy. I'm in line to pay, and to get to the front took me roughly 45 minutes, and as you can see, bodies just kept coming in to purchase Pokemon stuff. It's one of the 3 I visited. I visited Osaka's and Tokyo Stations. Each one has particular plush or gifts that they offer, so you literally do have to go around to find all the ones you want. But as you can see, the bodies go way deep, way to the front, and people are just coming and going.